Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Dibert, and I am the program manager for the Electrical Association of Philadelphia. This afternoon, I am joined by my colleague, Mayor Malfara, as well as our presenters. Today, we have Cale Wilson, Regional Distribution Leader for 3M. We have Mark Maskus, Regional Sales Representative for 3M, who facilitates end user education on 3M's electrical product range, offers part recommendations, and conducts installer training. And we have Jim Harduck from Construction Sales Group, Inc., who has 20 plus years experience as a manufacturer's representative sales agency specializing in the sale of engineered materials and architecturally specified products to the construction industry. I would also like to thank Billows Electric Supply for sponsoring today's session with 3M. Before we get started, please note that because we are recording today's session, your camera and mics have both been turned off. You are encouraged to ask questions using the chat feature. We will facilitate Q&A after the presentation, so don't hesitate to use the chat feature. Now it is my pleasure to present and introduce our speakers, Cale, Mark, and Jim.
All righty. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that so much. Thanks everybody for hopping on. So today we're going to kind of just do a broad overview of a number of the product lines that 3M has to offer in the electrical markets field. 3M has a huge breadth of products. So we're not going to spend too much time on anything, in particular. Mark, if you want to jump to the next slide.
Hold on one second. Not sure what's going on.
In the bottom left-hand corner, I think there's like arrows you can click. That work? There we go. Okay,
right.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, so like Matt said, we have 3 speakers today. This is kind of our most important slide here. If you don't listen to anything else, this is the most important one, just because we don't expect anybody to be product experts for 3M. That's what we're here for. So if you in future, if you ever need anything, we're here to help. We're going to give you kind of a broad strokes overview, like I mentioned, but we're not going to go too far into the weeds with anything. And if you need any support, we're here to help. As Matt mentioned, I'm the regional distribution leader that works with all 3M distribution in Pennsylvania, South Jersey, Delaware, and West Virginia. Mark is my end user counterpart who covers the same territory, working primarily with contractors. And then Jim is our firestop specialist who works out of the Philadelphia area. Go ahead, Mark. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit tape and supplies, and then I'm going to pass it over to Jim. He's going to do a rundown of our firestop offering, and then Mark's going to finish us off with some medium voltage and cold shrink training as well. So you can just jump right to the next one. So to start us off with something really simple here, this is our Performance Plus wire connectors. This is something that 3M invented, I want to say 10, 15 years ago or so. Some product specs for it. It has an industrial grade spring that gives it a really secure connection. It's also very flexible spring, so it gives you a little bit more wider range of wires that you can work with for each one. So what that gives us is we have consolidation of sizes. So you don't have to carry 7, 8, 9 different connectors in your bag. You only need 3 to kind of cover. It also has enhanced safety because we have a flexible skirt on the bottom of all of these Performance Plus connectors that allow you to cut a little bit more of the wire off without having that exposed when your connection's actually secure. So there's I have a few videos that we're going to go through here. Here's the first one. They're all only a couple, maybe 30 seconds to a minute long. Mark's going to start that off for us. righty. So yeah, that just kind of shows the strength of those compared to standard wire connectors. Mark, you can jump on ahead. So the big picture here, for 3M, what we're probably most known for are our tapes. And leading the charge on our tapes is our premium vinyl tapes, or our vinyl tapes, I should say, in general. And we kind of, in a lot of our product categories, have a good, better, best model. The good is our general use Temflex 165, 175 tape. Only difference between those two is that 175 is 7 millimeters, 165 is 6 millimeters. Also used to be known as the 1700 tape. They changed the name a couple of years back, just in case there's any confusion about that. But that's just your standard everyday PVC protection. Our professional grade, or our better, as we like to call it, is the Scotch Super 33 Plus, which is the industry standard tape that I'm sure everybody is very, very familiar with, top of the line vinyl tape. And to go along with that, the Scotch 35 tape, which is just the colored version. And then the top of the line heavy duty tape is our Scotch Super 88, which is just a thicker version of the Super 33 Plus. Or can we jump ahead? We have two more quick 20-second videos here to just kind of show the 33 Plus and its strength, the adhesive strength, and the flexibility of it as well. Alrighty, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Beyond the vinyl and the vinyl tapes, we also have a couple other options. Our insulating and splicing tapes. Number one product in there is our 130C tape. Those go a lot of the time hand in hand with our splices and terminations that Mark will talk a little bit about later, just kind of adding an additional layer of protection, more moisture protection, more environmental protection, that kind of thing. We also have on the right there, you see our sealing, padding, and shaping. That includes our mastics. We have a number of different kinds of mastic tapes. And really what mastic tapes are is they're a putty that, it's less of a tape and more of a putty that's been put in the shape of a tape. Basically what that is if you wrap a mastic around a cable or whatever you're doing to give it that moisture protection, when it comes in contact with itself, it forms to itself and it becomes one solid object. And the advantage of that is that there's no seam where moisture or dirt or anything is going to get under that seam and damage your cable underneath. It becomes one solid object, so there's really no leakage or anything there if it's applied correctly. And then we also have jacket repairing tape. 2234 is our standard jacket repairing tape. This is an offering just for little nicks and things on the cable jacket. Really, really helpful, saves you a lot of time because you don't have to, if there's a little nick or something like that, you don't have to completely repair, peel back the jacket, replace it or anything like that. You just wrap your jacket repair tape on it, saves you a lot of time. I do always say you got to be careful with this though. It's not a fix-all product. If the cut is deep enough, you do need to take that seriously, but it's more for, if there's one little cut and you don't want it to become worse, you can repair it ahead of time, save yourself a little bit of time there. You can jump ahead, Mark. This slideshow will be shared with everybody here, but we do have a product selection guide for our tapes. It's kind of a blessing and a curse that 3M has a ton of tape. So it's great because there's always a tape for your application. The problem is it's really, really hard to navigate it sometimes. So we have a product selection guide for our electrical tapes that essentially give you the size of the tapes, the applications that they're standardly used, temperature ratings, all that kind of good stuff, all in one easy to use format, so that you can find the right tape for you without digging through product catalogs and things like that to try to find the right thing for you. Makes it a lot easier. So this resource will be available to you. Jumping forward here, we're going to talk a little bit about heat shrink technology. So 3M offers a number of different kinds of heat shrink. We have thick wall tubing, thin wall tubing, heavy wall tubing, medium wall tubing. Those are just standard sizes. We also have flame retardant sleeves for certain environments where flame could be a factor. We also have splice kits, and we have a dual wall tubing as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about a few of those here. So Mark, if you want to jump forward. So why do we use heat shrink? 3M is really known for their cold shrink that Mark is going to talk about a little bit later, but why do we use heat shrink instead? Primarily for 3M, we only offer heat shrink for low voltage applications. Once you get over 600 volts applications, everything switches over to cold shrink from that point. But heat shrink is very helpful in some ways. It's nice because you can cut it up. You can get a 48-inch tube, cut it up into the sizes you need it. You can get a 100-foot spool if you're working on a job. Really easy to use. Everybody's pretty familiar with it. It's a lot more cost, it's an economic option if you don't need the performance as much, as what you would use for cold shrink. So those are kind of some of those advantages for it, but it still provides that insulation, the environmental protection, temperature protection, chemical and corrosion protection, all that kind of good stuff. So starting with our FP301, this is our thin wall tubing. This is the really the basic version. It comes in a number of different sizes and lengths and colors and all that kind of good stuff, but there's nothing, it's just our standard FP301 single wall tubing, the most economical option of all of them. Has a 2-to-1 shrink ratio. So from the size that it is when it's, before you heat it, to the size that it is when you shrink it down, it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So you kind of have to be aware of that when picking out sizing and all of that. Jump ahead. Medium and heavy wall tubing is just a thicker version. So if you're applying heat shrink in environments that have higher abrasion, require higher abrasion protection, temperature protection, flexibility, chemical resistance, moisture protection, all that kind of good stuff. The thick, the heavy, and the medium are all better options for you. The heavy wall flame retardant option is just that. It's flame retardant, and that's the medium and the heavy wall are the only two that are flame retardant. So you want to be aware of that. Thick and heavy wall ITCSN and ITCSF are not options for that. So go ahead, Mark. Yeah, so like I said, this just kind of goes through the heavy wall ITCSN. This is kind of the most popular after the FP301. We have all of our sizes for lengths and things on the side. We go from it comes in black, clear, and red, I believe, and then it also has a larger shrink ratio to kind of work with some of those sizing things. If you need that better protection, it actually shrinks from 3-to-1 instead of 2-to-1, like the FP301. You can go ahead. We also have bus bar tubing for heat shrink. Bus bar tubing is specifically designed for bus bar. Probably could have figured that one out. And the reason why that is because standard heat shrink tubing it's cylindrical, and it wouldn't really fit around bus bar tubing. So this is kind of designed to shrink around that square bus bar, and it's a little bit larger to kind of fit those bus bars for you. We also have dual wall adhesive lined heat shrink. So what this is it gives you a really good seal specifically for moisture protection, because the inner wall of the heat shrink is actually adhesive, and when you apply heat, it melts and it really forms to the cable or whatever you're heat shrinking over, and then the outer shell is just your standard heat shrink. So it gives you a really good seal there. Has that 3-to-1 shrink ratio like we talked about before. The only problem with it is it's, you know, if you are working in an application where you might need to get back into it, it is harder because you have that adhesive that has, you know, been formed to the cable in that application. And then the last one here is our 3M wraparound heat shrink cable repair. So this is a really good product for if you don't have access to the end of the cable, but you need to put your heat shrink. You can just wrap it around. It's essentially a zipper on the edge that you zip it closed, and then you heat shrink as normal. So really good if you don't have access to the end of the cable. It can get you out of a sticky situation. A lot of the time, it saves a lot of time rather than trying to, you know, shut everything down and you have to pull disattach it, put that thing, put standard heat shrink over the edge of the cable. So saves you a lot of time there. And I think that was it for me. Like I said, just kind of a broad overview of a few different product categories, but didn't want to take up too much time with this stuff because I think firestop and medium voltage will be a lot more fruitful for you. But like I said, feel free to reach out and I'll pass everything over to Jim here.
Thank you, Cale. As previously introduced, my name is Jim Harduck. I am representative for 3M fire protection products. I have a couple counterparts that work out of the same office in Yardley, PA. So we cover the metropolitan Philly area, Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and I have a counterpart that also covers Baltimore and DC. Next slide, please. So I'm going to assume most people on the call today have a general understanding of firestop. But for those of you unfamiliar with 3M firestop products, 3M has over 700 tested firestop assemblies, the majority of which are either UL or Intertech tested. And I would say probably, 85% of these deal with through penetration fire stopping. In addition to that, 3M is one of the few firestop manufacturers that offers a complete line of fire stopping products, including sealants, wraps, foams, pillows, pass-through devices, composite sheets, and putty. But aside from just manufacturing these fire stop materials, the other thing that we can provide you, we have a staff of people available to do certification training locally. We can also provide local field support for your jobs. In addition to that, we have pre-made or project-specific submittal packages. We can distribute these to you if you're interested electronically, or if necessary, we could provide hard copies as well. And then, of course, 3M has a staff of fire protection engineers that can assist with engineering judgment for those unique field applications where we don't have a tested system in place. Next slide, please. So as I had mentioned, 3M has a pretty complete line of fire stopping products, but what I'd like to do now, instead of go through all of the products, I'm going to focus solely on those that are typical for the electrical trades. Next slide, please. So the first product we're going to take a look at today, this is the workhorse of the 3M firestop line. This is our CP25WB Plus. This is an intumescent firestop sealant. We have more UL tested assemblies with this sealant than any other firestop sealant. This is available in tubes, sausages, and pails. And it's a great firestop product to be used with cable, conduit, and EMT. In addition to those situations, this product can be used in conjunction with a few of the other firestop products that I'm going to talk about in the next few slides here. With some of our tested systems, we can provide up to 4-hour protection with the CP25WB. Next slide, please. The next product I'm going to show you here is the fire barrier foam, or the FIP One Step. This is a relatively newer product to the firestop offering. This is a 2-component urethane foam. It can be used as a smoke, sound, and of course a fire stopping foam. Once this material is dispensed, it expands up to 5 times in volume. So what that does, that eliminates the need for mineral wool backing behind your fire stopping installation. As you can see from the picture here, this is a 2-component material, so it's dispersed through a static mixing tube. And we have pneumatic caulk guns that are basically used for this. They're specialized guns. And if anybody is interested in the FIP One Step, we can get you information on the related accessories with that as well. This is an intumescent foam. It remains pliable over the service life of the product. So if you needed to go back into it to, say, pull more cable, you could just take a insulation knife, cut a hole in it, pull your cable. If you had any remaining cured foam, you could stuff it back into the opening, and then any gaps or voids can be resealed with fresh FIP foam. Next slide, please. One of the things I want to point out about the FIP foam, this is a true fire-rated foam. So it's been tested against the spread of fire, smoke, and toxic gas for up to 2 hours. This is a lot different than the product you would find at your hardware store on the shelf. So this isn't like the foam in the can that you would use to seal, gaps and cracks around a window or a door. This is a highly specialized foam. It's great for large openings where you have, multiple cables penetrating a hole or cable trays. Can be used on conduit as well. Next slide, please. And upon that urethane foam technology, we have a product called fire barrier blocks. These are available in blocks, plugs, and planks. Essentially, it's the FIP foam chemistry. These are cured material that's available in these various configurations. This is a great product to use for large openings, or if you have a situation like in the lower right-hand corner picture there, where you have a fire-rated wall assembly, for example, with multiple penetrating items. This is a great material, can quickly close down those large openings, and you would compress the material around any of the penetrating items. Any gaps, cracks, or small voids you had, you could fill with the FIP foam or one of our approved fire stop sealants. The fire barrier plugs in the lower left-hand corner, that's a great product if you have sleeves cast in, concrete floors, for example. You can insert the plugs, and then later in the project, you can come back, cut a hole in them, and pull your cable through. These are flexible foam billets, if you will. So if you need to get back into them at some point and run more cable, you can easily cut them with an insulation knife. And again, any gaps or cracks you had, you would fill up with the FIP foam or one of our approved fire stop sealants. Next slide, please. They're available, as I had mentioned, in a few different sizes and configurations. Next slide. The next product I'm going to show you here is the pillows. These are fire barrier pillows. So it is a intumescent wafer that is shrouded in a plastic overwrap. The materials get left in the plastic overwrap and installed in the opening. We have 2 versions of this product, one of them with just a plain plastic wrap, and we have another one that has Velcro, so you can secure the pillows together. This is a pretty quick way to close down a large opening. Can be used with cable trays and conduit, and we have them in a few different sizes. We have them small, medium, and large. One of the nice thing about the pillows, there's no shelf life on these products. So as long as they're kept in a dry environment, you can use them almost indefinitely. They don't require any specialized tools other than your hand. Again, you just kind of compress them, shove them in the opening. If you do have any large gaps and cracks and voids, you could fill those in with either our putty, an approved sealant, or the FIP foam. Next slide, please. The next item here is our pass-through device. This is a one-piece hinged metal fire stop enclosure. Inside the steel sleeve is an intumescent pad. So that intumescent pad, when heated, obviously would expand and choke off the fire and the passage of smoke through the assembly. They're available in square and round configurations in multiple sizes. And the square units can be ganged together to address larger penetrating situations where you have multiple different cables. Next slide, thank you. And as with all of our, or I should say most of our firestop products, we have installation guides available. These can be distributed electronically or in hard copies. So you could download these, to an iPad or a smartphone and use them on the job site. Typically with most of our installation guides, you'll see that there's a pictorial illustration, and we also have minimal text on there. So basically we try to make this easy to use in the field. Next slide, please. The next product I'm going to show you here is our cast-in device. This is a one-piece plastic sleeve with an intumescent material on the inside. This product does require considerable coordination on the front end of the project. So basically, these plastic sleeves would get attached to your formwork, and they would get cast in place in your concrete floor or your concrete wall. Once the concrete has been consolidated and cured, you can come back at a later date and pull any kind of cable you have through these assemblies. For most of our fire stop systems with these, typically there's no other products used other than occasionally will require some mineral wool that has to get stuffed inside the steel or the plastic sleeve. So again, these would get attached directly to either wood formwork or steel formwork. They get left in place. There is a plastic cap over the top of the sleeve so that concrete doesn't fill the inside of the sleeve. And there's also pull tabs on there so you can set to the thickness of your floor or your wall. Next slide. This next picture here is the cast-in device being shown in a metal fluted deck. So this would be your concrete floor assembly for most commercial construction applications. To the right is a UL system for the cast-in device with a gang of cables being pulled through it. This particular system is a 2-hour rating. And this is a pretty easy system once you've coordinated on the front end of the project. All you have to do is come back later and pull your penetrating items through the sleeve, and basically you're done. Next slide, please. This is probably one of the most popular products amongst the electrical trades. This is our moldable putty, or our MP Plus. It's available in a putty bar, and we also have the putty pads. The putty pads are typically used on the outlet boxes. We have tested systems for up to 4 hours using putty. The putty will remain flexible and can be reused and reformed. Of course, it's an intumescent fire stop material, so this will expand when it sees the heat of a fire and act as a cold smoke seal as well. This can be used for new and retrofit installation. And again, the great thing about this product, doesn't really require any tools. You just unwrap the putty, work it in your hand for a few minutes to make sure it's soft, and then apply it to your fire stop condition. Next slide, please. As I had mentioned before, we do have installation instructions for the putty pads, an example of which you see here. Next slide, please. All right. This next product is our composite sheet, CS 195 Plus. This is one of the most cost-effective ways to close down a large opening in a fire-rated wall. Can also be used in a floor assembly, but just mind you, this is not a load-bearing situation. So any situation where you would use this in a floor and you're going to have any kind of pedestrian traffic, it would need to be protected from that. So basically what it is, it's an intumescent sheet that is sandwiched on one side with 28 gauge galvanized steel, and on the back side, it's a foil scrim system. Again, it's an intumescent material. It's great to use for blank openings in fire-rated walls or where you have multiple penetrating items like cable, conduit, bus duct. Any voids or openings in this material will typically get filled with either our putty or our CP25WB plus sealant. And in fact, the pictures you see there around the penetrating items and around the perimeter of the composite sheet, it's all sealed with CP25WB plus sealant. Next slide, please. So the composite sheet, again, just to reiterate, it's easy to install, lightweight, cost effective. It is UL classified. You can go back into the material if you need to pull more cable or conduit. You can simply cut a hole with a drill and a jigsaw, and then any large annular spaces would be filled with either putty or sealant. It's available in multiple sizes too. Next slide, please. And then the last product I'm going to talk about here is our endothermic mat, or EMAT as it's known. So this material is a flexible wrap system that utilizes our endothermic technology. So basically it relies on chemically bound water. So as this material would heat up in a fire, the chemically bound water is slowly released, which has a cooling effect on the surface of the material. So we have tested systems with this product for 2, 3, and up to 4 hours on structural steel. It can be used to wrap conduit, cable trays. You can also use it on the backside of electrical panel boxes. And of course, it's UL, Intertech, and FM approved. Next slide, please. So some of the advantages of the EMAT, as I had mentioned, it's relatively easy to install. There's no surface preparation required. So whatever the item is you're wrapping, you don't have to worry about cleaning it off first because you're not relying on an adhesive bond. Basically, it gets wrapped around that item and secured with stainless steel banding, which also makes it easy to re-enter for quality inspection or if there's future rework. Since it's a flexible wrap material, it will conform to various shapes, and it can be used both interior and exterior applications. Next slide, please. There are 2 Intertech listings for the EMAT. The drawing on the left shows it wrapped around a bundle of cable, and on the right would be a drawing for a conduit. Next slide, please. Can also be used for membrane penetration. So if you had an electrical panel or an elevator call box, for example, that was within a fire-rated wall assembly, you could use the EMAT to protect the backside of the box or the electrical panel. You would simply use one of our 3M adhesives, spray adhesives, sprayed on the backside of that panel or that call box, and attach the EMAT material that way. Any gaps and cracks would be taped off with one of our appropriate foil tapes. Next slide, please. And then in conclusion here, I just wanted to point out that we do have an extensive library, a video library of through penetration firestop installations specific to the electrical trades. And we haven't broken down by the assembly type. So this slide here would be typical firestop situations for either concrete floors or masonry wall construction. And I don't believe any of those links are actually live in my presentation, but if you're interested in this document, I can send it to you with some live links. Next slide. And then here's another example of some more of our video library installation guide. These would be through penetration for gypsum wall assemblies. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So I'll get into my portion here. My name is Mark Maskus, and I'm the regional electrical rep for 3M that covers basically the same area as Cale, all of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, South Jersey, a little bit of Delaware, a little bit of Maryland. So what I'm going to be talking about today, let me see here. I'm going to be going over some of the medium voltage cable accessories and applications that we have. So today I'll be talking about our cold shrink technology, some common cable types that you'll run across in medium voltage, cable preparation, and some important things to note there, some application solutions, and then some of the 3M services that we offer I will share at the end here. So cold shrink technology. So 3M invented cold shrink over 50 years ago now and has held on to that patent for quite some time. Basically enough time to pretty much perfect the science behind it. So we've gone through several generations of both cold shrink terminations and cold shrink splices, as you see here on this timeline. But basically, inventing it back in the 70s, going through, our quick terminations, our QT, I guess, 1 or QT through 2, and our QT3, which is now, the most commonly used cold shrink termination in the market, was actually invented in 1996. So we haven't really found a way to make that much better, and it is top of the line whenever you're considering terminations, and we'll get into those a little bit more in just a moment. So when comparing cold shrink versus heat shrink, it comes down to 3 main things. So the living seal, the adhesiveless design, and conformability. And when talking about the living seal, what I'm talking about, if you can see in the bottom right-hand portion of your screen, and this would probably be a little bit better in person, but whenever you apply your cold shrink tubing, that tube is always trying to get to the smallest size, basically the size that it was before it was expanded on and placed onto a core. So it has this living seal that's always, that's basically always applying inward pressure onto the cable. And 3M cold shrink products, they're all manufactured from premium material, which ensures optimum performance every single time. And I'll play this short video, but this kind of just shows the difference between heat shrink and cold shrink. When you're using heat shrink, that heat shrink stops shrinking the moment that you remove the heat source from that tube. Whereas, like I said, cold shrink is always trying to get down to its smallest diameter. And here's a quick short video to show that. So as you can see in that video, the cold shrink tubing did continue to shrink down to its smallest size and continued to create that inward force or inward pressure in that case on the toothpaste tube. So just to summarize, cold shrink eliminates safety concerns associated with the heat and open flames. There's no permits involved when using cold shrink. You don't need a heat permit of any sort. It's much quicker and easier to install than heat shrink, and also you're avoiding any, I guess, installer error or not having to rely upon the installer's experience with heat shrink versus cold shrink. And the overall electrical performance is much better, and 3M's cold shrink terminations and splices have very extremely low failure rates over time. So now I'll talk about the most common types of medium voltage cable. So I would say from this page, the three most common cable types I see are the second one there, the 3-conductor medium voltage armored cable, most commonly found in like industrial settings. The tape shield cable, so that's the copper tape shield. And then the fourth one there would be the jacketed concentric neutral cable. Those three, and the JCN cable, that's a lot of the utility distribution, also like wind and solar farms will be using the jacketed concentric neutral type cables. So just some real basic construction of the cable, starting with basically 6 layers here. Starting with number 1, you have your conductor for carrying the current. And when choosing accessories, medium voltage cable accessories, like I'm going to be showing here in just a moment, it's very important to know the conductor size. So, are you working with, a number 2 or a 2-aught or a 4-aught or, a 750 kc mil. So the size of the conductor is very important. The material it's made out of, whether it's copper or aluminum, is also important. And also like the shape, whether it's stranded, compressed, compact, solid, that's also important because it's going to change the type of, let's say, lug or connector that you're going to choose. It might change the size of the accessory that you're going to choose. So knowing all of that is important. Moving on down, the next one would be the strand shield, number 2 there. And that's just basically semiconductive layer located between the insulation and the conductor, and acts as kind of like keeping out air voids from the conductor in between the insulation and the conductor. Your insulation is next, and you'll see different colors of insulation. So you'll see like white or clear. You might see like a pinkish or orangish color. So this would be like EPR rubber, ethylene propylene rubber, or commonly referred to as EPR, versus XLPE, which is the cross-linked polyethylene. And then in some cases, I'm seeing it a lot out there in your area, is the PILC, the paper insulated lead covered cable that is still in the ground today. And then just moving along, the insulation shield, basically made up of your semicon and your metallic shield, whether that's neutral wires or tape shield. But those two components make up the insulation shield. And then of course you have your outer jacket. So that's just the basic construction of a cable. And then as far as medium voltage, we consider medium voltage anything from 2001 volts up to 35 kV. So just rule of thumb there, when selecting cable and cable accessories, it's always good to use the next higher voltage rating. So yeah, 2001 to 34.5. Anything above that we would consider high voltage. Cable prep, I will touch on this Briefly, this is something that we do. Do a lot of trainings in the field for cable preparation on termination splices and elbows. And I won't get into it too much here, but basically following the directions and doing proper cable preparation does minimize failures that might occur. And one of the ways to be kind of consistent about that is using specialty tools. There's different manufacturers out there that make these specialty, removal tools or scoring tools for certain parts. And you'll see in this next slide what I mean. So, the first thing, just basic steps, is jacket removal. Then you're going to remove the metallic shield, whether that's the tape shield or the neutral wires there on a JCN cable. But then the semicon removal, this is a very important step because as you'll see here in the next few slides, as I go over some of the failures, 90% of cable failures happen at this step, the semicon removal. So using a tool, a specialty tool in that case is nice because you can set the gauge of your blade to score that semicon, the appropriate depth, and use it over and over again. And then, next step, number 4, removing the insulation. And then cleaning the insulation is a very important step. You're going to want to sand, do a light sanding just to take out any imperfections. But if you have any deep grooves, nicks, cuts, anything in that insulation, this isn't something that should be attempted to be sanded out. Most likely, you're going to have to start over if the groove is deep enough. But just a rule of thumb, when you're cleaning, you want to clean away from the semicon on your insulation, never touching the semicon with your solvent wipes, because you don't want to be dragging that semiconductive material from the semicon, the black layer, onto the insulation, because that's just going to lead to problems down the road. So I'll go over these briefly, but just common causes for failure in a medium voltage cable. Most of the time, so we have down in our headquarters in Austin, we have a failure analysis lab, and customers will send in their, dead bodies, splices, terms, elbows, basically cut them off and send them down there to be analyzed to find out where the point of failure was. And more often than not, it comes down to the cable preparation or the improper installation of the accessory itself, meaning not following the right measurements, or improper positioning, improper crimping. So in the next couple of slides, you'll kind of see, like for instance, in this one, this was improper crimping, and also crimps not rotated correctly, as you're supposed to rotate as you go down the lug or the connector. This one just crimped with the wrong die, wrong size die, so eventually leading to thermal failure. Here's a big one. So this is the semicon cut. The black is the semicon layer. The white is the insulation, and you see those cuts in the insulation right above the semicon. That's going to lead to a failure every single time. You'll see that hole in there. It's caused by what is called the corona effect, and that's why you can't have any imperfections in this insulation, because it'll just drill a hole right through your cable, right through your accessory. This is very bad here. This is an uneven semicon. You basically want this cut to be as square and straight as possible, and not jagged like this whatsoever. So this has to be the cleanest cut in your preparation. It's sometimes referred to as the money cut, because I think 90 some, I forget, 90 some percent of failures occur at this semicon. So, and that's why they call it the money cut, because if you have a cable failure and your line's down, or you know, part of your plant is down, I mean, you could be costing you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in some cases during a failure. So this one is important to be as straight as possible. And just, you know, just workmanship failures. This one here, and I'll get into reasons why this happened. This is a QT2 splice that ended up having water in the cable's strands. So what happens is aluminum oxide on the conductor strands combined with water, the actual water, created a hydrogen gas. So basically this gas will either burst rapidly and explode, but more often than not, it basically what is called burps down the interface between the cable and the termination. And this is what you see, just like a big ball of air in there. So keeping water out of the cables, we do have a product for that. We do have cold shrink end caps, which I'll show you at the end here. But it's always a good idea to keep something like a cold shrink end cap from 3M on any cable that's not being, you know, not currently being used, to avoid that from happening. So I'll touch on some of our bread and butter products here, and start with the termination. So 3M, our terminations are very reliable thanks to an integrated high case stress control, which in the QT3, you see at the top of the screen there, does not have to be installed as a separate step. It's basically built into the termination itself. So these are very easy and fast to install. Uses high performance silicone material. As a very compact design and a short termination. Even our outdoor terminations are short, which I'll show you here in just a second. No tools are required, like heat shrink. So it's definitely a go-to for, you know, quick installations. That's where it got the name QT. It stands for quick term. All of our terminations are class 1, which meet these standards that you see here. So provides electric stress control, provides tracking protection, and is sealed off to the environment. Here you'll see two different types. You'll see an indoor termination on the top and an outdoor termination on the bottom. The bottom one, the outdoor termination, is skirted, and it's skirted for several reasons. Some people call it a rain shields, which allow the water to drip off, which it does do, but it also increases the creepage distance or the leakage distance. So you see the blue line is one length in the indoor, but it's much longer. That it makes the termination much longer for that purpose. So you have a much longer outdoor termination. And this is just a cut back from the indoor and the outdoor. You actually see right on that semicon step, there's an extra layer of high K stress mastic built into the termination that falls right on that step. I don't know if you see my mouse or not, but and then we also have mastic at the end as an environmental barrier. And again, all of that is built right into our terminations. And the difference here we have with these outdoor terminations, 15 kV at the top, 25 kV gets 4 skirts, and typically 35 kV will get 8 skirts. And I will show you this quick video. It looks like we have a couple minutes to go just to see how easy it is to install. All right, so that was our QT3 termination. As you can see, very quick, very easy to install. We also, and I'll be very brief on these because I want to share something at the end here, and I know I got about 3 minutes. Separable connectors. This would be your 600 amp dead brake elbows and 200 amp load brake elbow as well. We carry the full line, so we can accommodate for the dead brakes anything from 5 kV up to 35 kV. And these are just some of the components that come along with that. And then as far as the load brakes, the 200 amp load brakes, we have 5 kV up to 25 kV. Cold shrink splices, we do have QS3 and QS4. The QS4 is an integrated splice, so everything is basically built within the splice body itself. So there's no need to have a ton of room. So these integrated splices are used a lot of time in like manholes where spacing is limited. Our shear bolt connectors replace the compression connectors, which we still offer, but it's it's basically a great product that we can get into a little bit more. I won't spend too much time on it today because Kale covered a lot of this, a lot of the tapes. Okay, so with my last 2 minutes, I want to go over 3M's construction services program. Basically with construction services, this is for electrical construction contractors. If you have a project coming up and you have the one-line drawings and the cable schedule and the cable cut sheets, you can provide that information to our construction services team. We will do a complete custom takeoff for your project. And then if you decide to move forward with those parts, custom parts and custom kitted parts, you can basically let me back up. With the custom kitted parts, everything is labeled for you and it corresponds to the part of the job site where that kit needs to go. So this is a free service, complimentary service that we offer. We will provide you with the takeoff, with all of the part numbers and all of the quantities needed, and then put all of the additional parts like lugs and connectors in those kits with the cable accessories as you need them. So this is something that you can reach out to us about if you're interested in having us do a takeoff for you. This is another slide here that you'll have access to. Complete kits, custom labeling, direct on-site shipping, complimentary on-site installation and support, and then free ongoing technical support. And then lastly, we do want to mention our 3M Energy Academy, which is just at 3m.com/Energy Academy. And there's 50 plus electrical courses on there that you can take on your own time. Everybody in the electrical trade or the electrical industry should take a look at this and take some of these courses. They are, it's a wealth of information that you might not be able to get anywhere else, and they've put a lot of time into it. So please check that out. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email myself or my colleagues or give us a call. So I know that's at 1 o'clock right now, so I'll say thank you and I'll pass it back over.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Great information and product expertise from all of you. Sure, this will definitely help our members understand the vast variety of products that 3M offers for the electrical industry. Thanks again to Kale, Jim, and Mark for presenting today. I also want to thank everyone for joining us today, especially those who made it to the end. The recording of today's presentation will be shared with EAP members next week on EAP TV. I will also be providing Kale, Jim, and Mark's contact information in case you have any questions about any of the products or services found in this presentation. And I hope to also be able to provide you a copy of the slide presentation as well. Looking in the chat, I don't see we have any questions, but again, you can follow up with Jim, Mark, and Kale after the recording. With that, I do want to thank you again for attending. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you at our next virtual trade talk. More details at eap.org/virtual events. Have a great afternoon.
Take care.
Thank you, Matt.